Hey guys, Mike from Deepwood Force of Will here, coming at you guys with another video, and also the start of a brand new series. I know you guys are like, Mike, you just keep making new series, when are you gonna finally come up with something that works? Well, this is an idea that Joey and I have had for a little while now. This is something that I wanted to start up, especially for a lot of newer players. I know with the release of Ancient Knights, we got a pretty decent number of new players coming into the game, so this is definitely something that's geared towards them, but also if you're kind of a competitive player and you want to get a little bit of a refresher on certain cards, we're starting up the Card Corner series, where we'll be taking episodes and going over specific cards and how they interact with certain decks. So if you guys like this, like the series, like the idea of the videos, feel free to let us know. Feel free to suggest cards that you want to see featured on this this series. And without further ado, I want to get started and bring up the first card in our series. So the card that we have listed here today, the card for our episode 1 of the Card Corner, is Demonic Dead. Now you guys are probably looking at this like, Mike, this is a common card from Echoes of the New World. It's a 2-mana, 3/3 with a grave effect. How is this card special? Well, there's a lot of really interesting implications to this card, but before that we get into those, let's go over the very basics of the card. The card is Demonic Dead. It has a total cost of 2 will, being 1 darkness will, and then 1 of any color. It is a 300 attack, 300 defense resonator, and is a race zombie, so that's pretty important if you're going into Wanderer and use a lot of the zombie support that's there. Not really as relevant in New Frontiers, but nice little tidbit of information there. Again, as I mentioned before, it's a common card from Echoes of the New World, and its effect is relatively simple on paper. It's to pay 500 life, put this card from your graveyard into your field rested. Now, on paper this card, again, looks very simple. It's a simple effect that recurs in the graveyard, allowing it to recur itself in a rested position, so you pay 500 life and get a 300/300 body. Now, while that might sound kind of lackluster, the implications of that, again, as I mentioned before, are very, very powerful. So, a couple of extra little tidbits. We got the basics of this card. Again, that effect that activates from the graveyard is an activate effect, so it's, of course, not an automatic effect. It's not continuous. It's an effect that can be stopped by cards such as, if you're going into Wanderer, Glimpse of Kaguya, but in the current format, the most likely response to this card you'll see will be Neo Barrier of Shadows. Because it's also a quick cast effect, well, because it's an activate effect from the graveyard and it doesn't say once per turn, it is a card that has quick cast speed, so you can play that effect on either player's turn. Another quick thing, well, aside from the fact that it can be played on either player's turn, and it can also be played in response to any player's card effects on either player's turn, means you can play it as a very responsive card, as a card that you play at the end of the turn to get it back and unrested at the start of your turn. So there's a nice little bit of plays that you see there where you get to kind of affect how the card comes into play and focus on your timing a lot better. Another really important fact is that this card is not limited to once per turn, so if you pay the 500, bring him out, for some reason he leaves the board, you can just pay 500 right again, bring him right back out. It's a very, very powerful effect, and not having it limited to once per turn makes this card a very, very potent threat. And the last little thing to mention is that it does have low stats for its cost, being a 2 will, 300/300. Those stats are on par for a 1 will card. Definitely sacrifice a little bit of strength for the versatility, but again, that versatility, as we've seen in these other notes that I've made here, is extremely, extremely powerful. Now, how do we make Demonic Dead work? How do we really, milk the value out of this card? Well, we'll start off with a couple of really good synergy cards. The first of which you see on the left is probably the most common application for Demonic Dead, using it in the Nine-Tailed Fox. In combination with Planting Beans, of course, we see down there. Planting Beans lets you just pay 1 will, search your deck for any card, and put it into your graveyard, immediately setting up your Demonic Dead and allowing you to go further through the game with just a card that comes out into play for paying 500 life. And then, of course, we all know what Fox does, where you sacrifice a Wind Resonator, a Darkness Resonator, and a Killing Stone, and summon a Chimera. So, with Demonic Dead in the deck, all you really need is just Demonic Dead and any number of Wind Resonators, and you basically have your engine going for the rest of the game. Demonic Dead is definitely one of the big reasons that the Nine-Tailed Fox is as powerful as it is. So that's always something that's fantastic. The other thing that Demonic Dead really helped with Fox, since Fox is a very combo-oriented deck where you want to play a card, play another card, sack them both, and get a Chimera, makes the deck very susceptible to cards such as Severing Winds, where if you play the Wind Resonator, try to play a Darkness Resonator, and the second one gets cancelled, you lose a lot of your tempo from that. However, with Demonic Dead, you get to play a card, activate Demonic Dead's effect. Since it doesn't count as playing a card, rather activating an ability, you can't actually cancel the summoning of Demonic Dead because it's coming off of an activate effect rather than from paying its cost and playing it as normal. So the card helps you get around a lot of pitfalls that Fox has seen, and is definitely one of the huge reasons that Fox is as powerful as it is. Last little bit of information with Fox is that since Fox's big main threat is Amit, which allows you to gain life back, as well as, Killing Stone gaining you life back, you get to kind of go neutral on your paying 500 life each time you play it, which makes the card very, very strong going into the late game for Fox, just because once you've played it enough times, once you've paid 500 life enough, you just play your Amit, kill something your opponent controls, gain all that life back, and just keep going as normal. Second on our list here is kind of just an example I've provided as a Mujdart, Lady of Illusions. Because Demonic Dead constantly just comes back from the graveyard, just constantly goes back into your field, having field buff effects or effects that target it, that buff it, are really, really powerful. Mujdart, of course, being other Darkness Resonators you control gain plus 200/+200. That means anytime your Demonic Deads come back into play, instead of 300/300s, they're 500/500s. And those tend to stack up a little bit better than the 300/300 would. Especially if you start getting multiple Demonic Deads on the board. Once you start having two 500/500s come back at the end of each turn, recover them, attack your opponent, sack them both off, they come back again. Once you start that train going, the card is very good for tempo, especially with board-wide buffs such as Mujdart. The last card we definitely want to mention, and cards such as Dark Riding Hood over there, are cards that gain more effects the lower your life is. Because Demonic Dead is a card that kind of controls how low you get your life and how often you make payments on your life, you can control when your Dark Riding Hood's effects will activate, control which effect you want to see, and make it so that you're not leaving Dark Riding Hood strength in the hands of your opponent, but rather being proactive with it, which Demonic Dead helps out with a lot. Again, we don't normally see Dark Riding Hood doing something like this. We don't really see Demonic Dead and Dark Riding Hood paired up in the same deck, but there is some synergy between them, and we certainly can see effects that cause you to pay life definitely being very good with Dark Riding Hood going forward. So obviously we see these great synergies here. We see that Demonic Dead is used for many, many purposes with many different decks, especially potent with decks that like to have creatures on the board for you to sack, good for decks that want to get low on life or just have a lot of creatures to keep pumping out tempo and putting your opponent on a clock, and Demonic Dead is fantastic at that. But I know what you're thinking, Mike, this card is so powerful, what could possibly stop this? This is a grave effect, this is activate effects, you can't cancel this, what do you do against this card? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we have definitely a couple of weaknesses for that card listed here. The first weakness we see here is definitely one of the premier counters to Demonic Dead, being Rizard, King of the Damned. Rizard is a very simple resonator where you pay 200 life and you remove target card in a graveyard from the game. So of course your target is going to be that Demonic Dead in the graveyard. You're going to say, I pay 200, remove the Demonic Dead from the graveyard. Your opponent responds, I pay 500 life, I want to put it back into my field. You respond to that, nope, I'm going to pay another 200 life, target it again. Your opponent's payments are much higher than your payments are, and definitely will stack up quicker than yours, so by the time you've paid about 1600 life, your opponent has gone through their entire life total, they cannot bring back Demonic Dead anymore, and Demonic Dead stays removed and will not be coming back, so Rizard is definitely a huge boon against that deck, and we see Rizard in the side decks of a lot of decks that want to defeat Fox, defeat any decks that want to use Demonic Dead in them. The second on the list is Heteroclite Excalibur. This one is a little less against the Fox matchups with Demonic Dead, because normally your opponent's going to be sacking their Demonic Dead in response to this card's activation. But for any deck that wants to pump out a bunch of Resonators, put a Demonic Dead on board and have it stay there, Heteroclite Excalibur is probably one of the single best removal options you have for that card, being that you pay 1 will, remove target Resonator from the game, being of course the Demonic Dead, and you lose 500 life. So the price of 1 will and 500 life means that your opponent's technically infinite resource generator is removed from the game forever, which is absolutely incredible, and definitely one of the big reasons that Heteroclite Excalibur sees a decent amount of play. Again, with decks such as Fox, where most of their playing is done on your turn, and where Heteroclite Excalibur normally will target a Demonic Dead, and then the Demonic Dead will just be sacked for a Chimera effect. That normally is going to be the case there, but in the case where they play the Demonic Dead, get a Chimera, and then play the Demonic Dead again, if you catch them off guard, if you catch them with a Demonic Dead in play, without a way to sacrifice it, Heteroclite Excalibur will normally seal that game for you. Last on the list there, we see Reincarnated Maiden Flame Priscia. If you're on the European ban list, you don't have to worry about this card, but she's a placeholder here as kind of like the definitive face of aggro. Demonic Dead, again, constantly costs you life points to play it back. It constantly causes you to bring your health total down further and further, and anytime an aggro player sees you dimming down your health on your own without even their help, they're going to start licking their chops. They're going to be like, alright, it's time to go ham and it's time to beat this guy up. So when you're facing your aggro matchup, it's definitely good to know when to Demonic Dead and when to not Demonic Dead. And those people who do not know how to Demonic Dead and don't know when to will normally get their face pushed in by anything that Priscia is running. So again, definitely not the weakest card, definitely a very, very powerful card, but Demonic Dead does have its struggles in the current game, and knowing how to play against it and how to really avoid your opponent milking the full value out of Demonic Dead will definitely come down to A, your ability to side into Rizard, and B, the timing and the ability to force your opponent into situations where you can gain value out of removing the Demonic Dead and making sure that they kind of force themselves to pay life into a situation where you can probably kill them by building up a board and preventing them from really getting their full Demonic Dead value. So with that being said, hope you all enjoyed the video. Demonic Dead is a very interesting card, a very, very powerful card, and definitely a really good starting talking point for our card corner videos. Let me know what you guys think about this series. Let me know what, of course, what we could do better, what you guys would like to see, and of course, if you have any card suggestions, I am more than open to any suggestions from you guys. So with that being said, thank you all for watching again. This has been Mike from Deepwood Force of Will, signing out.